Hello, how are you? I'm so glad you're here. So in this video, I thought I'd talk a bit about the role of unlearning things when we're trying to recover from chronic pain and other chronic symptoms. And the reason that I'm mentioning this is it's come up a few times this week with different people. And also I put a wee post about it on my Facebook page. So I thought it might be something to discuss. So the idea is that as well as learning new techniques and trying to build new pathways, we also have to kind of unlearn the ones that are already there. Because if you think over time, we have learned so many things, and so much of what we do, well, everything that we do really is all learned. Think from that very early stage, pathways are created within the brain and the nervous system in response to different stimulus, in response to our needs, in terms of how our needs are met or not met. And these things are learnt over time. And like anything that's repeated, it becomes more ingrained and that pathway becomes stronger. So it's similar to if you think when you're learning any sort of skill, if you're learning to play the piano or ride a bike or speak a language, different language, all these things are learnt behaviours, and we learn them by repeating them over and over and over again so that they become ingrained and that pathway is well developed and we can use it with relative ease. So the same thing applies when we've lived with persistent symptoms. The pathways in terms of both the symptoms arising and also in how we react and respond to these symptoms become learned. And as we repeat them over and over and over again, they become ingrained and the learning becomes even more so. So just like anything, as time goes on, the longer you do something, the more you repeat it, the more you're learning, to do it with greater ease and with less thought. Do you think, for example, if you learn to drive at first, you have to think of everything that you're doing, and it's, you're concentrating really hard on the steering and the gears and where you're going and everything else. But over time, that becomes almost like an automatic thing. You can drive somewhere, you might not even think about all the different things you would have to do in the past. You can talk to someone else in the car. You can sing along with the music, or think about what you're going to be doing later in the day. Whereas when you're learning initially, you're really having to focus on what you're doing. So when we've been living with certain symptoms over time, and that's become very ingrained, and that pathway has become really quite strong and reinforced by the repetition, then it becomes the default position. So we're not really conscious of what we're doing and what we're responding and how we're responding to it. So that can be quite a challenge to try and unlearn, if you like. So while a lot of the work we do is around developing the new pathways, it's also recognising that these existing pathways are there and we want to kind of unlearn them. So how do we do that, you might ask? Well, the thing is, it's like everything that we really talk about is about noticing when that happens. So it's noticing when we're kind of going to that default position. So it's trying to be general. I suppose the whole thing is about being more sort of more aware of our thoughts and more aware of the reactions that we make, and probably particularly these kind of automatic ones that we're not really probably generally that aware of. And it's only when we start to do this kind of work and we're thinking about it a bit more that we actually notice it. So it can become a bit of a kind of to and fro and a sort of backwards and forwards sort of idea of a symptom comes up, you notice the symptom, and then you maybe you notice, oh goodness, that's happening because it's expected, it's a learned response, whatever your kind of the things you tell yourself are. And then you probably flip out of it and then flip back again and back and forward and back and forward. It becomes a kind of, as I say, a sort of toing and froing when you're trying to unlearn. So you can't just expect it to be, oh, because I'm learning new techniques, that I'll just suddenly forget all the stuff I've learned before. It doesn't work like that. We have to sort of unlearn as well, because the learned pathway will still be the stronger one. It's the one that's been more reinforced over time. So we're going to naturally gravitate towards that. The brain will naturally gravitate to what it knows, even when it isn't the best thing for us. We know that in lots of ways. We kind of stick to what you know, because it's ultimately safer, because the brain knows what to expect. So even when it's not a good thing, for the most part, people will resort to what's known. Better the devil you know, and all that kind of idea. So, as I say, it's the unlearning that has to go on, as well as the new learning, and the two have to kind of go in tandem, in parallel, if you like. And that can be quite tricky, because people think, oh, but why am I still doing that? Because I know I've been doing my somatic tracking, and I've been doing my noticing my thoughts and catching them and focusing on positive sensations and doing all the other work that we do. Why am I still having these things? Why am I still going down that rabbit hole of thing? That's because that's what your brain knows. So you will naturally go to what you know. And you can think of that in lots of different ways in life. We always tend to take the same route to certain places. As I say, a bit like driving again, it kind of becomes an automatic thing before you even know where you are. You've arrived at somebody's house, you've arrived at your work, you've arrived at a shop or something, and you haven't really given any thought. But you've had to do a lot of things to get there. But because it's so ingrained, it just kind of happens. It's such a almost automatic thing now. And that's the same for these sensations, for these responses to the sensations as well. So like everything, it's not about beating yourself up over it. It's about noticing and then changing that switch round. And then it'll happen again, and that's okay. And just notice it again and switch it round again. So it's a noticing and switching. And I say it becomes a kind of to and fro, back and forward, and having an awful lot of chats with yourself in your head. But the main thing is just to not put pressure on yourself, and just accept that it's all normal and it's perfectly natural to have these thoughts and these responses and these sensations, because they have been there for so long. It's the well-worn path, and that's the route that your brain will take. Your brain will take the well-worn path over the new one, even though the new one is more beneficial. That's just the way we're wired. And it's only by gradually and with reassurance and a calm, comforting approach, not beating yourself up, that it will gradually, the new path will gradually become the well-worn path. At the minute, your brain will always take the path of least resistance, which is the worn path, which is the pain and the reaction and the catastrophizing and oh my goodness, what's going to happen? But as you gradually learn new skills and new techniques, and your brain gradually learns this new pathway, so the shift will occur, and that will become the new normal, if you like. That will become the path that is the one that your brain's going to choose. But in the early stages, and often for quite a while, it will flip between the two. So that's okay, because we have to unlearn as well as learn something new. Okay, that was a wee bit waffly there, not often a wee bit of a tangent, but the gist of what I'm saying is, be kind to yourself, don't beat yourself up. It's quite natural to have these flipping between the two and to struggle to unlearn, because that's tricky to unlearn something that has been well ingrained and well established. But it will come, and so just have faith in the process, and keep being kind to yourself. Okay, I'll leave you for that for now. Bye-bye.